You are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Real Impartation Moment on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Open. Today's section, I take you through pretty simple topic as far as developmental anatomy is concerned. My friends, today we want to deal with development of the diaphragm. My friends, I'm not talking about any other diaphragm. For instance, I'm not talking about the oris diaphragm, okay, where it's formed by, of course, mainly the mylohyoid muscle. I'm not talking about that one. Neither am I talking about, of course, the pelvic diaphragm, which is, of course, mainly formed by the pelvic floor muscles contributed by the levator ani and, of course, the coccygeus muscle. I'm not talking about that one. Neither am I talking about the urogenital diaphragm, which is contributed by, of course, the superior layer or the fascia of what we call the urogenital diaphragm, including the perineal membrane. No, these are not those ones I'm talking about. But my friends, I'm talking about the thoracoabdominal diaphragm. Why? Because it's that kind of physical barrier, that structure, okay, which is going to separate this thoracic from the abdominal, cavity. That's what we are going to talk about. Okay, this musculotendinous structure. Okay, let me show you that one. So this is what I'm talking about today. Okay, I'm talking about this is the thoracic cavity, this is the abdominal cavity. Okay, this musculotendinous structure that we find over here, which we are calling the thoracoabdominal diaphragm. That's what I'm talking about. Its development, simply, that's what we want to look at. My friends, so we are looking at development of the diaphragm. So development of the diaphragm actually commences around the 4th week of intrauterine life. Yes. And it goes up to about, let's say, beyond the 12th week of intrauterine life. So let's look at what begins the formation of this, thoracoabdominal diaphragm I'm talking about. Now, to do that, simply if you use a diagram to that effect, it will make a lot of sense, okay, for us. So assuming schematically, I want to represent this. Use this to be a diaphragm, developing diaphragm, yes. So the first thing that I want you to put down over there, okay, now taking that with respect to orientation, let's take this to be the posterior aspect. We are going toward the back. This is the posterior aspect. And then as we gradually come this way, we are coming anterior, we are coming to the ventral aspect. Okay, so we have posterior part and we have the anterior part. Now, one thing that is very common, which you might be aware, okay, so let's draw this. Let me make it a bit smaller, reduce the size over here a bit. Over here, there's some organ developing in here. Okay, this is the esophagus. I have this to be the esophagus. Yes. Now, one thing that we are aware, okay, about the esophagus is that to be connected. I'm going to show you that. Okay, but before that, the first structure, which begins around the 4th week of intrauterine life, forming an important component of the diaphragm. Why? Because all these muscles we insert over there, and that is something we call the central tendon of the diaphragm. So let me use this to show. So this structure that I'm having over here, okay, is the central tendon of the diaphragm. Central tendon of the diaphragm. Central tendon of the diaphragm. That is where all these muscles will come and insert. Now let me show you the central tendon of the diaphragm. Okay, this whitish so-called thing that you find over here, that becomes your central tendon of the diaphragm. That's where all these muscles, okay, they are going to insert over here. Now the point is that we call it central tendon of diaphragm, but why is it that I'm showing it from the anterior aspect? Okay, I said there's the anterior aspect. As you go this way, I'm going this way. So why am I showing it over here? My friends, the reason is simple. Now, when we were talking about the 3rd week of intrauterine life, and I told you also about the differentiation of the lateral plate mesoderm having what we call the somatoperic and then the splanchoperic components, okay, separated by what we call the intraembryonic coelom. I told you that the cranial-most region of the embryo, where we expect that the lateral plate mesoderm should be differentiated, is not differentiated. Yes, there's no coelom over there, and that portion is something that we call septum transverse. We treated this already. Now, just last week, when we were doing that kind of revision regarding neural crest cells, as well as, of course, gastrulation, I told you something. That, of course, cranial, okay, to what we call the buccal-pharyngeal membrane or the oropharyngeal membrane, the future opening of the mouth, was the cardiogenic area. So the heart was developing above the opening of the mouth. Then I even told you that even cranial developing of the mouth will be the septum transverse. Yes, but I told you that these things happen because folding, craniocaudal folding had not taken place. But for craniocaudal folding, then what is going to happen is that this septum transverse, which one of the derivatives is the diaphragm, in this case, this is the central tendon of the diaphragm, and it is derived from something called septum transversum. I want you to know that. Septum transversum. The septum transversum, yes, will come from the cranial region, and then it will go below the heart, the developing heart. It will go below the developing mouth. Okay, the craniocaudal fold will ensure that. But for it to go to its normal position, to go to the central region, it will first go to the anterior aspect before it goes, to the central region. That is why the developing diaphragm, we expect to see the central tendon of the diaphragm most anteriorly. That's what I want to tell you. Okay, developing from, of course, this septum transversum. Now, my friends, over here we have the esophagus. Now, the esophagus, importantly, just like these, intraperitoneal organs, most of them, okay, if you look at the course of the small intestine, be connected to the posterior abdominal wall by way of what we call mesentery proper. Yes, talk about the appendix, mesoappendices appendix is there. Okay, talk about the transverse colon, there's transverse mesocolon. Okay, talk about the sigmoid colon. Okay, all these ones, they have their mesocolon. So the same way, the developing diaphragm, okay, the esophagus over here, to the posterior wall of the body, we have what we call the mesentery over there. So this one is esophagus. For this reason, this structure I'm trying to show over here becomes what we call dorsal, okay, going to the posterior aspect. So it becomes dorsal mesentery of esophagus. Yes, esophageal, dorsal mesentery. That's what we find over here. Something we can also call mesophagus. Yes, you can also call it mesophagus. That's a dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. Now, one thing I want you to know over there is that this dorsal mesentery of the esophagus will give rise to the crura of the diaphragm. Yes, so this dorsal mesentery of the esophagus will give rise to what we call the crura of the diaphragm. Let me show you that it will give rise to the crura of diaphragm. Crura. Now that's the crura form of crus. Now whenever we say crus, we are talking about leg-like structures. Okay, let me show you those leg-like structures. Okay, so this is what we have over here. Okay, now this is to the right. So there's the right crus of the diaphragm. They also have the left crus of the diaphragm. Right crus is longer than that of the left. Okay, that's what we see. Like I see, this is the esophagus, and they are behind the esophagus and circling, going behind the esophagus. That is why it is going dorsally, dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. Yes. That is what we've seen over here. Now, apart from this, okay, one thing that you also see is that, so we see two derivatives. Now I said four. Okay, diaphragm we derive from four structures. We already seen two of them by way of the central tendon of the diaphragm. Okay, giving rise to what we call, yes, formed from what we call septum transversum. One derivative from septum transversum. The other one is the dorsal mesentery of the esophagus, giving rise to the crura, left and right cruise of the diaphragm. Then apart from that, we also have what we call some kind of muscles. Okay, I'm supposed to get some muscle component. Okay, so this way I'm having, let me use this to show. Okay, now this is what we have over here, these muscles on either side. Now this is something we call the body wall mesoderm. Body wall, I want you to know that, body wall mesoderm. And don't forget that the diaphragm, yes, it's made of skeletal muscle fibers, not smooth muscle fibers, skeletal muscle fibers. Okay, now invasion, okay, and it's a very important component, okay, I mean, as far as the body wall is concerned. So body wall mesoderm will give rise to that portion, the muscular component of the diaphragm, the muscular component of the diaphragm. But my friends, something important that we have to talk about, these muscular components, they actually, okay, originated from the cervical myotome. Yes, so remember that we talked about somites. That somites, we have myotome over there. Now I'm talking about the cervical myotome, the 8 cervical myotomes. Okay, now for this reason, so this body wall mesoderm, okay, which I mean we are talking about over here, can also be referred to as, I mean, they will be coming from what we call the cervical myotome. Those 8 cervical myotomes, okay, will give rise to what we call the muscular component of the diaphragm. Now, it makes sense, and that is the reason why I want you to know that this, even the nerve supply, the nerve that gives motor supply to the diaphragm, okay, originates from the cervical region, C3, C4, C5, okay, from the cervical plexus, okay, will come and supply this diaphragm we are talking about. Okay, so it tells you that it will be originated from cervical myotome, okay, the body wall mesoderm. That's what we are talking about over here. Now, apart from that, once we form this, now this cervical myotome, I mean these muscles, okay, usually will form around the 9th to the 12th week of intrauterine life. That's what is going to happen. Now, beyond that, there is another structure which forms over here. Now, this is that one I'm talking about. Before I even explain that one to you, which I'll come to it, there's something I want to show you over here. Initially, the peritoneal cavity, which is in the abdominal cavity, and of course the pleural cavity, which is in the thoracic region, they were communicating together. It was one single entity communicating together. So those structures are there, were there. Now, so assuming that the pleural cavity, and there's the peritoneal cavity. Okay, if you go caudally, you have the peritoneal cavity. Now, with time, there was that kind of constriction trying to separate. Okay, with this diaphragm forming, okay, they began to also separate themselves. Because at the end of the day, the peritoneal cavity is supposed to be with the abdominal cavity. The pleural cavity is supposed to be with the thoracic cavity. So they have to separate as the diaphragm is also formed. So what is going to happen is that there's going to be that kind of constriction. So there will be that kind of constriction over here at a point. Okay, so that this one, yes, you have a pleural cavity. And then you also have a peritoneal cavity. Now, what it means is that there will be a canal, okay, where it's not fully fused yet. Okay, so still there's a communication by way of a canal over here. And my friends, that canal is therefore called pleuroperitoneal canal. So keep an eye on it. I want you to know that it is pleuroperitoneal canal. Okay, served as the communicating, okay, structure between the peritoneal cavity caudally and then cranially pleural cavity. For this reason, yes, the diaphragm needs to also get a structure which will close up this communicating structure. Now, before I tell you about this, one thing that I've seen is that sometimes people get it confused. Okay, instead of writing, we are talking about pleuroperitoneal canal. Some people put down pleuropericardial canal. No, I'm talking about the peritoneal cavity and the pleural cavity. No pericardial issue over here. Okay, so the connection, okay, what the structure is going to fill up this gap over here is the one over here. Now I want to put these dots over here, representing the membrane where it's going to fill up, okay, the canal, and that canal is the pleuroperitoneal canal. Pleuroperitoneal canal. So my friends, the answer we want to put over here is the pleuroperitoneal canal. Sorry, this time is the membrane which has filled it. So there's pleuroperitoneal membrane. Pleuroperitoneal membrane. Yes. So what are those structures which we've seen? Central tendon is formed by who? Of course, septum transversus. So one of them is we need septum transversus. Number two, the one who is going to form the crura of course, the diaphragm. What are you talking about? The dorsal mesentery of the esophagus. The third one, okay, the muscles, the body wall. Okay, so we talk about the body wall mesoderm, or those muscles come from the cervical meatum, okay, forming, of course, the muscular component of the diaphragm. Yes. Now, are we done? No. We said that there's a canal, which was initially, we said we had pleural cavity and peritoneal cavity communicating. Okay. Then as the diaphragm began forming, okay, there was that kind of constriction trying to separate the pleural cavity from peritoneal cavity. And so that canal, which will persist, is therefore called pleuroperitoneal canal. And this pleuroperitoneal canal will have to be bridged, okay, by a membrane. And what's the name of that membrane? Pleuroperitoneal membrane. My friends, this pleuroperitoneal membrane is so thin, and that is why it will be invaded by the muscles from the body wall mesoderm. So the muscles will invade it, okay, so that it gives it some kind of structural integrity. Yes, that's what we are going to see. Now, this is where we have some two important issues I want to talk about. One of them is something called congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Yes, congenital diaphragmatic hernia. Now, usually, this congenital diaphragmatic hernia I'm talking about usually occurs to the left side of the diaphragm. So we have right hemidiaphragm, left hemidiaphragm. Usually I'm talking about the left part of the diaphragm. Now, why am I talking about this one? Usually it occurs over there. Now, in about 1 to 2,200 live birth, babies may present with this congenital diaphragmatic hernia. And as I'm saying, mostly to the left side, although it can be bilateral anyway, but it can mostly is to the left side of the diaphragm. That one, mainly, it is due to the absence, okay, of this membrane forming. The absence of pleuroperitoneal membrane, or the persistence of pleuroperitoneal canal. Okay, yes, the same thing. Persistence of pleuroperitoneal canal, or absence or non-formation of the pleuroperitoneal membrane usually will lead to this congenital diaphragmatic hernia I'm talking about. Yes. Yes. And so usually what happens is that there's that kind of foramen, okay, in this kind of newborns or these kind of fetuses, okay, this, foramen over there, which we call it Borderlegs foramen, Borderlegs, okay, or foramen of Borderleg. Now, why am I talking about this? For this reason, this congenital diaphragmatic hernia is also having an eponym, okay, border legs hernia. So if you hear of border legs hernia, my friends, we are talking about congenital diaphragmatic hernia, mainly due to non-formation of properitoneal membrane or persistence of pleuroperitoneal canal. Yes. Okay, that is one thing I want you to know. Now, there could be other types of hernias, okay, although, this border legs or this congenital diaphragmatic hernia is common, as I told you, 1 in about 2,200 live birth. Okay, you can see that. But in the situation where I am talking about now, sometimes the esophagus, this esophagus, okay, where I'm talking about this dorsal mesentery of esophagus coming to try and, of course, form the core of the diaphragm, sometimes this area becomes weak. Congenitally, it's weak. Now, congenitally, if it is weak, then it can lead to that rare, this kind of something called hiatal hernia. So that there will be a hiatus, something we call esophageal hiatus in the diaphragm. Okay, so what will happen is that some portion, especially the cardia of the stomach, can herniate through. It's very rare. Yes, quite rare. Now, sometimes too, there's this kind of hernia. Now, the diaphragm, okay, that we have, now we see that it has some kind of attachment, connection with the xiphoid sternum. Yes. Now, between that sternum, okay, and the diaphragm itself, there's some kind of foramina over there, 2 foramina. Something we call foramina of Morgani. Now, we talk about foramina of Morgani. Foramen of Morgani. Yes. Foramen of Morgani. Sometimes too, something because it's just behind this, sternum, we can say parasternal or retrosternal. Okay, that is what we see. And so for this reason, sometimes there could be that kind of para or retrosternal hernia of Morgani. Now that one too is also rare. Okay, so importantly, what I want you to know is that congenital diaphragmatic hernia with a defect, okay, in, of course, this pleuroperitoneal, membrane. Now, having talked about that, there's one more thing I want you to know, and that is something we call eventration of diaphragm. Eventration. Now, let's put that same point out. That is also related to this same pleuroperitoneal membrane. Eventration of the diaphragm. Eventration. Now, whenever we talk about the eventration, now what did I tell you? I told you that once we have this body wall mesodermal muscles, okay, we invaded, okay, this pleuroperitoneal membrane, so that gives it some kind of structural integrity. Now, what nerve gives motor supply to the muscle? Phrenic nerve. That's what we're talking about. C3, C4, C5, root value. Yes, from the neck region. So sometimes congenitally, maybe this nerve may not form very well, or it could be injured, okay, over there. But mostly, I'm talking about the fact that I'm talking about congenital cases. It could also be acquired anyway. Now, what I'm saying is that if that happens, then these muscles will not be able to perforate enough and invade this one. For this reason, instead of muscles forming, it will just be some kind of elastic fibers, okay, some kind of, fibrous tissue formed over here. And that becomes a thin membrane. It will not be that strong enough. Yes. So when that happens, okay, what is going to happen is that we have just a thin, membrane over here. That is what we call the eventration of the diaphragm. So when that happens, because that diaphragm, that component of the diaphragm is so weak, is so thin, then what happens is that the abdominal content may herniate in there, okay, may move in there, okay, trying to push against this diaphragm. So when that happens, that portion of that diaphragm, that heavy diaphragm, it could be left-sided or right-sided, that portion, okay, will of course be pushed a bit upward so that the abdominal content, okay, will move up. When that happens, then it tells you that, of course, we're talking about the lungs, that portion of the lung, okay, may not, fully, develop very well. If it's the left, okay, then of course, it's going to lead to, of course, this heart, trying to move even towards the right. Because mainly, what I want you to be aware is that this Bogdale's hernia, okay, congenital diaphragmatic hernia, which I told you more to the left, when that happens, you're breathing. You may have difficulties with it. Your left-sided, of course, that portion of, the lung, or of course, will involute. Okay, will become small. Why? Because of hypoplasia, it will not be able to grow. And not only that, even the heart, because the abdominal content will herniate through. Okay, will go into the pleural cavity, will herniate through, so that they will push the heart, which is supposed to be on the left side, more towards the left side, pushing it towards the right side. Okay, that's what we are going to see. So these things, they are very important. That's why I told you that the diaphragm is formed that kind of physical barrier between, of course, this, thoracic cavity and, of course, the abdominal cavity. My friends, I'm very grateful for your time this evening. I hope you find it helpful. Have a good night, all of you, and may the good Lord richly bless you. Amen.